Okay, I'm hitting the books. Well, book. So I'm wiring this system up, and I'm starting with the ignition switch right here because I want to use that as my master control to turn things on and off. So when we turn the key off, it's like having a master kill switch. So that's why I'm looking at what the wires are right there. And we have several wires. We've got a black wire, we got red, pink, blue, and orange. And you can see right here it says starter relay, accessories, ignition, starter. Which that means that the ignition is on. That's a on-in crank, so that it goes to the ignition system in crank, so that it works in crank, so you actually start. Okay, now to show you kind of what that looks like over here. So we did the book part. Let's do the realistic part. So I'm not using everything on there. I'm going to use the crank right here, the hot and crank that would go up to the starter part. Actually goes to the I part on the solenoid that energizes the starter solenoid, and then it in turn clicks on the ignition, EGR, ballast resist, all those little things right there, and starter. So I'm going to use this as my trigger wire to make the ignition system and starter work in crank. Everything else is going to be ran off accessory. So since I'm doing a lot of relays on stuff, that's how I can get away with running one wire right there to accessory. Tucked in behind here, the black wire, I've already ran my wire to that and connected to it. Now what I am trying to do with these right here is make a disconnect on these, because when I finish with this wiring harness, this isn't the permanent wiring harness. I want to be able to take this wiring harness and plug it into another vehicle that I'm building, that I'm at this stage on, and then that's how I can get it started up and running, right? Here's another key thing right here, a little box that I got. And actually, if you watch my Facebook and Instagram, I went to a local car show, and a guy had wired his Dodge truck up using a lot of these little buggers right here to eliminate all the silly nonsense that the factory did. I'm going to make a little mount and put it right back where the fuse box hole is, right there. I think that's pretty much the perfect spot to put that. Oh, the gauges floated up in here. Well, they're not tied down. I'm going to be sitting there messing with them and knock them over. Need to anchor them down. Okay, so coming up here, I have my wire right here that I'm working on. I decided to route this back behind the little fender panel instead of run along there. It kind of hides the wires a little bit. I'm trying that out. I've seen that done before, and a little bit of mixed results, because if it's back behind there, it's kind of hard to access. So it's almost like I need the fender off, or I need the inner fender out, something like that, so I can get up in there and then actually mount it correctly. But that's just one of them I'm playing around things. But that goes all the way up into the hole right there, like what we was talking about, to the black wire, so that's going to energize everything. On the end of this, I'm going to put one of these boogers right here, 10 gauge, up to, I believe it goes up to 30 amps, maybe 40 amps. I'm not going to run 40 in there. I'm going to run whatever I feel it needs to do, run the ignition, charging system, and then the relay on the crank, right? Relay on cranking. So I'm using this pretty much the same way the factory did. So this is power from the battery right here. So I'll come up, and instead of a fusible link, I have another one of those little fusible links instead of the fused link stuff that the factory used. So that's coming in there directly off the battery. So that gives me my energy for this to run. The wire I was talking about, the orange wire, the hot end crank that's for the starter, that actually goes here. Even goes there from the factory. Once that energizes here, these three poles, it switches the relay onto them, so that power comes from here to all three of those positions, right? And of course, this is just your little ground. You have to ground this box. So what I'm going to do is, this is still the starter right there, and then I'll pick one of these two right here. One is EGR and one is ballast resistor. So I'll just piggy off one of those to my ignition system so that it's hot and crank so it'll start up. So that's what I'm trying to get to tonight. I'm running into a couple of issues because I have plenty of the male connectors, and in this box that I got they gave me 0 of the female connectors of that size, and only a handful of these, which are too small for some of this stuff. So I can only get so much done on that. But what I'd like to do is run all my wires, or a good portion of them. Another thing, so you see me using these, and I finally got tired of using these, right? Because they suck. I went to Home Depot, and I was going to get me a pair of pliers like this. I think I was going to get Klein Tool. That's what I was going to get. That's a good brand. They were literally double the price of these. These were 17 bucks. I mean, that's a lot. And I gotta tell you, these things work phenomenally good. Same design, it works the same way. Just, you know, I can't see paying double for 0 improvement in the tool, right? Other than just buying a name. I still use these for stripping, but I think I will go and get a pair of the little needle nose, little strippers, and start using those and just improve my tools. I'm going to be doing a lot of wiring. Okay, so this is where I got on the wiring. I have pretty much everything wired up the way I want it. What's left is to just finish, put a battery in, get the battery terminals on, finish up some grounding wire. I do have the charging system wire that I need to hook up, and that's all on the battery side of that. I do want to do a little bit of a check on this first, but I do have the fuel pump to put on, well, that's the reason why I haven't done the wiring on it, because I want to place the pump and get all my fuel lines ran, all that plumb, before I finish the fuel pump side of that. Alright, moving to the inside. Got our wires hooked up. I went ahead and I'm running, going to the little fuse box right there, the ignition wire right here, which is just a hot and run, and I'm running my other hot and run. That way I have 2 inputs coming in, so I'm not just overloading one little wire. I shouldn't be, but the fuses I put in there is 3 5-amp fuses, and that would be overloading for that wire if they all were to be pulling 5 amps, which would not blow the fuse. Got a little bit of tack hookup to do. I just mounted my gauges right there. Also come over here and I figured out my switches. So I did a little mount right there for those. Tack's mounted up there. Box is mounted right there. Got my fuse in, like I said. Got my inputs in, got my grounds in. So what I'll do once I go through and function check all of this, then I'll go through and clean it all up and put the convoluted tubing and stuff on it. But I've learned not to do that before everything gets function checked. Because if you go through and make everything clean before you function check it, guess what you get to do? Every time something won't be right, and you get to undo all the stuff you just put together to figure out what the problem is. So anyways, I think that's going to wrap up where I'm going to end this video on the wiring, getting the new harness installed for now, because I'm about to move on to the fuel system right there. Yeah, that'll wrap this one up. And I appreciate you going through and watching this. Hopefully you learned something from how to wire some of this stuff up, and it gives you the confidence so that if you got a project like this and it's like, man, all the wiring is just trashed, I want to get my engine running or something, you can go in and yes, you can make your own harness. You can also go buy a harness too if you can afford it, but you know, there's a couple things of that. Some of these harnesses out there, you can get the generic harnesses, they're expensive and they're not all that fun to work with. If you go through and wire it yourself, you know what you got, right? I mean, you know, you designed it essentially, so you know all the ins and outs of it instead of working on someone else's design. So that's just another option that you have right there, another way you can go about it. Alright, well, that'll wrap this one up, and I'll see you next time on Broken Tool Garage.